Well, I took my cameras with me, wouldn't I?
No comment on that.
What a bell end. Hey up and welcome back to Apple Yards in Keighley, and today I'm going to be taking out the Suzuki V-Strom 1050 DE. So if you're in this neck of the woods, get yourself down to Apple Yards here, a well-established local company, excellent stock, plenty of demonstrators for you, and very knowledgeable and helpful staff. And thanks go especially to Lewis and to Kieran and to Mikey, who look after me here. So let's crack on, and I'll give you my impressions of the Suzuki V-Strom 1050 DE. Right, the first thing to mention about this bike is she's a tall old girl. Seat height 880 millimeters, and although I'm 6'1" and reasonably long in the leg, I'm on the balls of my feet. Yeah, a tall bike for sure. I don't know if there's a low seat option for this, but for anybody reasonably short in the legs, say about a 29-30 inseam at this seat height, you would struggle, probably be on tippy toes. So yes, really comfortable riding position, nice wide bars, a relatively narrow seat where it counts, and an excellent elevated view all around. So yeah, the Suzuki V-Strom 1050 DE, and this, the off-road biased V-Strom 1050 variant. The previous incarnation was the XT, which didn't quite have the off-road focus that this bike has, and specifically, if memory serves, wider bars on this bike and a 21-inch front wheel rather than a 19-inch front wheel. And as is often the case on these bikes, adventure bikes, we've got the old 5-inch TFT there, plenty of functionality, plenty of information, all of that telemetry if you can be bothered. And it goes without saying that a bike like this, which is fitted with a 6-axis IMU, that there are all sorts of customizable settings, from throttle response to off-road ABS functions and all the rest of it, that tend to have me glazing over. I'm not an off-road enthusiast by any means. It's nice to have a bike occasionally that, as well as touring, will perhaps tackle some unexpectedly rough terrain, and this would do it with aplomb. And yeah, a little bit of wind turbulence, but very clean air. And of course I'm well above the level of that screen there, which is a bit shorter than on the previous model. Again, part of the off-road focus of the bike. And noticeably more lazy turning from that 21-inch front wheel than you will get on a 17 or 19-inch wheel. But graceful and progressive nonetheless. and bags of torque from this 90-degree V-twin engine. And I suppose if we're to think in terms of the obvious competitors for this bike in this category, it's not really what you would call a mid-weight adventure bike, nor is it quite in the category of heavyweight adventure bikes as defined by the likes of the BMW R1250 GS and GS Adventure, KTM 1290 Super Adventure, Triumph Tiger 1200, Ducati Multistrada, etc. So somewhere betwixt the two, and the obvious competition would be the Honda Africa Twin. I think this is where this is pitched at. Other contenders, I suppose, the new Ducati Desert X, and there are other 1000cc adventure bikes out there. I mean, you'd probably drop it a little and think in terms of the Triumph Tiger 900 and other sort of 900-ish cc competitors offered by a number of the main marques. Now, for straightforward road use, you could perhaps think of alternatives like the Yamaha Tracer 900, the Kawasaki Versys 1000. They aren't, strictly speaking, adventure bikes. They have that style about them, I suppose, but they certainly wouldn't have the off-road capability and credentials of this bike. And I do like the colour scheme. Love this yellow, black and blue. Really sets the bike off well. Excellent view to the rear in the mirrors. Just see the tops of my shoulders. And it's a nice comfy ride. I mean, these roads in this neck of the woods are notoriously uneven, poorly maintained, and this bike soaking up the lumps and bumps. But we'll talk about the suspension on the walk around. So we'll be coming into a little bit of traffic down here, and we will be able to sort of see how she fares for urban riding, specifically what the fueling is like. Nice light clutch action at the lever, and it's as I'm sure you can see, it's a hydraulic clutch. So let's just do a bit of pootling in first and second gear and see what the fueling's like. I mean, my first sort of thoughts are that this would make an excellent touring bike without a shadow of a doubt. 1 up or 2 up with luggage, not a problem. And just ticking along here in second gear at what, 15-16 miles an hour. Fueling's perfect, very smooth. So on the TFT we have displayed there from left to right, just on the right hand side of the TFT there, well, you see at the top there's a clock, which I always like to have on a bike, and then underneath that you've got the traction traction control settings, set currently to number 1. You've got the SDMS setting currently set to A, which I'm going to guess is the throttle response setting. And then you've got the ABS setting, which is set to number 2. Don't propose to go through what all of those mean, because it's not really interesting, and it's all there on the web if you want to look up the details. And tackling this steep hill now in 3rd gear absolutely effortlessly. So there's the rev counter on the left, digital speed readout in the centre, and then beneath all that your fuel gauge, temperature gauge, and what have you. Pretty comprehensive and very clear. Lots of power in that engine, not quite as mental as the Husqvarna Norden 901 with that 890cc parallel twin, but not far off, it has to be said, but of course a considerably bigger engine. Now this is a heavy bike, and we'll take a look at the exact weight on the Walkaround, but around the 250 kilogram mark. And hefting this bike off the side stand does take a little bit of effort. But like all big bikes these days, up and running, light as a feather, highly manoeuvrable, very responsive. Lovely implanted on the bends. So lovely, slick and positive gearbox. 6-speed gearbox on this. And no issues whatsoever finding neutral like you get on some bikes. And of course, when you're paying fully spec'd up in excess of £20,000 for a new BMW R1250 GS, or a Ducati Multistrada, or a Triumph Tiger, certainly the Explorer models with the bigger tank, you pay in excess of £20,000 there. So for a decent sized, well powered, well equipped adventure bike like this to come in at £13,500, you can see what the attraction is. Bags of character from that V-twin, and a lovely exhaust note from the stock exhaust. I don't think you'd need to do much with that. So what else we got on here? Well, looking at the switchgear, we've got a cruise control. We've obviously got the usual setup for indicators, horn, starter, kill switch and what have you. No surprises there, fairly conventional. But yeah, cruise control, which I think is a great feature. Either for making sure you stick to speed limits over long stretches, or just to give your right hand a rest from time to time. No keyless ignition, I'm very pleased to say. Can't be doing with keyless ignition. I've had two bikes with keyless ignition. KTM 1290 Super Adventure, which were forever going wrong, and a BMW R1250 RT, which didn't go wrong while I had it, but still didn't inspire me with confidence. I'd much rather have a key. So that box well and truly ticked. Right, nothing behind, so let's do a brake check. Oh yeah, plenty of bite from the front there. And the rear, bit bland. Plenty on the front though. Right, let's see what this engine has to offer us with some spirited acceleration. Oh yes. Oh, if this isn't enough power for you. Why on an adventure bike you would want any more power than that, I don't know. It's well mapped for the mid-range for sure. Right, okay, so here she is then, the Suzuki V-Strom 1050DE. Looking very striking there in that yellow, black and blue colourway. And that rectangular headlamp with a controversial nod to the 80s. But yeah, really good looking, purposeful looking bike. So let's have a look at the specs then, and first we'll talk about that engine. Okay, so the engine on this bike is a 1037cc liquid cooled 90-degree V twin. And plenty of real world power from that engine, bags and bags of torque. The suspension at the front, we have KYB 43mm forks, and they are fully adjustable. And at the rear we have, hope you can see it there, a KYB preloaded adjustable suspension unit. And as for those excellent brakes, we have at the front two 310mm discs with 4-piston radial calipers from Takiko. And at the rear we have a single 260mm disc with a twin piston Takiko caliper. The front wheel is 21 inch and the rear wheel here is 19 inches, spoked tubeless, as you can see there, externally spoked tubeless. It's a 20-litre fuel tank with a claimed 54 miles per gallon. Maximum power is 107 brake horsepower and 74 foot-pound of torque, and a claimed tank range there of 238 miles. And as you can see, the only problem with yellow is the flies love it. They're also loving my head at the moment, bear with. Yeah, what else can we talk about? Well, yeah, a massive exhaust there, OEM exhaust. Sounds pretty good, but my words, it's like a council wheelie bin, isn't it, that thing? LED rear light assembly and chain drive. This bike comes complete with the centre stand and engine bars. And we've already talked through the TFT functionality there. So I think all in all, a very purposeful looking adventure bike. And the seat height, 880 millimeters, and that is quite high. You can get factory luggage. You can see the mounting points there for any luggage that you might want to add, and I'd certainly be doing that if this was my bike. It'd make an excellent touring machine. What do you reckon to that headlight? Okay, so let's have a look at me upon the bike. Right, okay, so let's climb aboard. Tall bikes like this need to be mounted like a horse, foot on the stirrup, and quite some heft to get off the side stand. 252 kilograms this bike, and you certainly feel it while stationary. Of course, whilst up and running, absolutely no issues at all, light as a feather. A striking looking bike really, very purposeful looking bike, and nice to see an adventure bike that comes fitted as standard with engine bars and a centre stand, which is almost essential for chain maintenance if for nothing else. I suppose the question is, if you're in the market for a 1000cc give or take adventure bike, it comes down to this: the Africa Twin, maybe the Ducati Desert X. There might be a couple of others. There aren't that many in this category, unless you're going to include the likes of the Triumph Tiger 900 and its Ducati and BMW equivalents. And the price point of just over £13,500, that's about the price point, isn't it, for a basic Honda Africa Twin. So it may be an issue of individual taste or brand loyalty or what have you, but certainly not a price point that massively undercuts the competition. But nothing about the bike that says that it's anything other than really well put together. The fit and finish is excellent. Those gold anodised spoked wheels and the matching gold forks at the front really set the bike off. And as a credible tourer, one up or two up with some luggage, this would be a very comfortable way to eat up lots and lots of miles. So yeah, the Suzuki V-Strom 1050DE, Suzuki's off-road biased adventure bike. Cracking bike. So let's have one more beauty pass. Now, one thing I did forget to mention that this bike has is hill hold, which is very useful. Yeah, hill hold, so almost like an electronic handbrake on a car, and really is only premium motorcycles that tend to come with that. So yeah, Suzuki V-Strom 1050 DE comes with hill hold. But what I like about this bike, and it's not exclusive to this bike, but it is very noticeable on this bike, and that is the often incongruous combination of a very elevated riding position, very commanding riding position, and very nimble handling. There's just something a little bit counterintuitive about whipping round a bend cranked over when you're perched up as high as you are on bikes like this. And it's great fun. And throw into the mix an engine as long-legged and capable as this one, and you've got a pretty comprehensive package. So yeah, you could cruise all day long on roads like this at 70 miles per hour, stick the cruise control on, and away you go. Absolutely perfect as a touring option. So in conclusion then, what do we think about this bike? Well, it depends what your expectations are around the price point. And if your expectations for 13,500 just over of your finest English pounds is 1000cc plus bike, capable of touring, capable of commuting, capable of going off-road if necessary, having a comprehensive electronics suite including hill hold, throttle settings, traction control, switchable ABS, 6-axis IMU, yada yada yada, TFT screen, lots of telemetry to keep you amused. If that's what you expect for that amount of money, you will not be disappointed with this bike, because it's got all of them and it can do all of those things. And the only issue I would have with this bike is purely a personal aesthetic issue, because some people love it. Well, it's a couple really. One is that that rectangular headlamp at the front. It just doesn't seem to bed in with the rest of the design. Well, that's purely my subjective interpretation of how the bike presents itself visually. The other is I like adventure bikes, bigger adventure bikes, to be a little bit wider in the girth, to be a little bit broader across the beam, if you will. And this it isn't a skinny bike by any means, but when you've sat on the likes of the GS Adventures and the Super Adventures and Ducati Multistradas and what have you, They've got a lot of girth about them. Now some people think that's a bad thing, but I like that in a bike of this style. So I'd have given her chubbier chops, but other than that, an absolutely omni-competent, well made, well put together, well designed, good looking, apart from the headlight. Piece of kit, thank you. So once again, thanks to Apple Yards for the loan of this bike, very much appreciated. Get yourself down here, you can test ride this bike. This is the demonstrator. Come down and see what the top of the range V-Strom is all about. And until the next time, ride safe, be kind, keep it shiny side up, and I'll see you on the next one. Toodle pip!